Hello everybody, Nick Wisman here, and another edition of Wiseman's Weekend Wellness Tips. So first off, 恭喜发财, happy, prosperous New Year, Lunar New Year, for all those who celebrate this New Year. I hope it brings, happiness and prosperity for you. But this weekend I wanted to talk about the day that's tomorrow, and not Valentine's Day. No, that's important too, but tomorrow is actually National Donor Day. So wanted to talk a little bit about that because, as many of you may know, I have very, very personal experiences with organ donation. And this is something that I deal with pretty commonly in my practice as well. So as many of you know, my daughter had 2 liver transplants when she was, before she was 2 years old actually. And so now this is something that, we've had to deal with pretty much her whole life in order to learn how to deal with an organ transplant and someone being on immunosuppressant drugs. And so I've learned, having the perspective that I do, we do some pretty unique things for my daughter that, for me seems fairly normal and something fairly standard, but I know a lot of people probably aren't as aware of some of this stuff and necessarily doing this stuff, within their own family, within their own home with that. But, part of it for me is a lot of just the experience I've had in general, not just with my daughter, but also in China when I was practicing, when I was learning really at that point in time and interning more. I was working in hospitals and working with different doctors, and in those situations in a hospital, you just see a lot more things like people with organ transplants and on immunosuppressant drugs. So it was something that I learned a little bit more about and kind of got used to dealing with in a little bit more of a clinical situation. And the truth is, when you have a transplant, when you are on immunosuppressant drugs, honestly, there's a lot of stuff that you cannot do. There's a lot of supplements you can't take. There's a lot of herbs you can't take. There's a lot of foods even that you may have to avoid. Something like grapefruit, for example, it changes the absorption of some of the immunosuppression drugs, so you got to be careful with that. So there's a lot of these little things that just, make treating people a little bit more tricky. But the truth is, something like acupuncture and different techniques that Chinese medicine has are extremely safe, extremely effective things that we can use in order to help people out when they're dealing with an organ transplant, in the run-up to a transplant, in the aftermath of a transplant, or years later after a transplant. Or even if you haven't had a transplant and you're on immunosuppressant drugs related to something like an autoimmune condition or cancer, these are things that I deal with very commonly, and at this point have a lot of experience with, have done a lot of research with, and know what we can do, what we can't do. Because most of the time when I'm seeing people around immunosuppressant drugs and transplants, it's dealing with a lot of potential side effects that may come from some of these drugs. It's dealing with other conditions that honestly a lot of us just deal with all the time, such as colds, flus, aches and pains, digestive discomfort, whatever it may be. And this stuff happens to all of us, but again, when you have a transplant, when you're on immunosuppressant drugs, you may be a little bit more worried, a little bit more nervous about how to handle that kind of stuff. And so this is something that, I have a lot of experience in dealing with, and acupuncture helps a ton in this. Acupuncture is great at really, just balancing parts of your immune system. Again, not necessarily boosting it, because if you're on immunosuppressant drugs, we don't necessarily want to do that. Not necessarily suppressing it more, because usually we're trying to keep your immune system in a very narrow range where it's still able to function, but not function to the point that it's attacking the own body. This is stuff that acupuncture can do related to digestion. Sometimes there's side effects related to, the surgeries or transplants or drugs, slowing up your digestion, speeding up your digestion, either way, just making it less efficient. So this is something we can definitely work with very closely. Headaches, aches and pains, potential neurological conditions that may come with some of this. Pain often is a big one that we're dealing with, in various ways, shapes, or forms. So I just wanted to put this out there that if you've had a transplant, if you know someone that has, if you're in the run-up and you're just not sure what you should be doing, how to prepare, if you're on immunosuppressant drugs, potentially not even related to a transplant, then this is something that I deal with very commonly, and there's very safe, helpful ways that we can help using acupuncture and various techniques within Chinese medicine. So tomorrow, Valentine's Day, Happy Donor Day. Please, if you're not an organ donor, be an organ donor, because you can't take your organs into the afterlife, and there's a lot of people that could really, really use them out there. I mean, you're literally saving lives with this stuff. So please be a donor, help some people out, and if you have any more questions, check out our website at wisemannaturalhealth.com, and you can learn some more information about how we can help you there. Hope you have a good weekend. Bye.